The hasty generalization fallacy is very common and can be found in various fields including business, education, science, and our day to day lives. This fallacy occurs when we draw a conclusion based on insufficient evidence, such as a very small sample size or a biased selection of data. Let's take a look at how the hasty generalization looks. A small sample X is taken from population Y. A conclusion C is drawn from the sample. This conclusion is now extrapolated to the entire population Y. To give you an example, let's say that I take a small sample of 20 students from IIT and test their IQ. I find that 18 of them have an IQ of over 140, which is 90% of the sample. That is, over 90% of the sample have an IQ over 140. Based on the sample results, I now conclude that 90% of all IIT students have IQs over 140. Generalization based on a sample is in principle an acceptable method to draw conclusions. But it becomes a hasty generalization when the sample size is too small or biased to justify the generalization to the entire population. Imagine you meet a few people in your town who don't like pizza, and based on that, you conclude that nobody in your entire town likes pizza. This is a hasty generalization because you're making a broad conclusion about everybody based on a small unrepresentative sample. Or for that matter, imagine you try a new brand of cereal and find it to be really delicious. Based on your experience with this one brand of cereal, you assume that all cereals made by that brand are equally delicious. This is a hasty generalization because you're making a judgment about an entire range of products based on your experience with just one of them. In the 1980s, the United States was in the middle of an HIV/AIDS epidemic. At the time, the virus was primarily associated with the gay community and there was widespread fear and stigma surrounding the disease. Many people made hasty generalizations about all gay men, assuming that they were all infected with HIV/AIDS or were at high risk of contracting the virus. This led to discrimination and marginalization of the entire gay community. One of the most tragic examples of the harm caused by hasty generalizations during the HIV/AIDS epidemic was that of Ryan White. Ryan was a teenage boy who contracted HIV from a contaminated blood transfusion. After his diagnosis, White was banned from attending school in his hometown in Indiana, with some parents and officials arguing that he posed a risk to other students. He and his family were subjected to harassment and threats. The case of Ryan White highlights the dangers of hasty generalizations and how they can harm innocent individuals and communities. By assuming that all gay men were infected with HIV/AIDS, many people ignored the reality of the disease and how it was transmitted, and in the process they failed to provide the support and resources to those afflicted by AIDS. In business, hasty generalizations can lead to poor decision making, such as launching a new product or service without conducting proper market research. For example, a company may assume that a new product will be successful based on feedback from a few early customers without considering the opinions of a larger sample or conducting market research to determine if there's a real demand for the product. Hasty generalizations are common when we draw conclusions about people, political events, and causation for behavioral and physical phenomena. The next time we draw conclusions about the character, competence, or motivations of another person or any phenomena, maybe we should pause and introspect to see whether we are being hasty in our conclusions.